Okay. Hi, I'm Mary Dahlgren. I'm from Oklahoma City and I am a national letters trainer. So I have to say, I feel honored that Voyager Sopris asked me to do this presentation that they're sponsoring. And I've been teaching letters for the last 16 years. I feel it my greatest privilege to have been taught by, mentored by Louisa Moats, Carol Tolman, and others on the letters team who are dear friends and still great mentors, great people to talk to about what's the research and what's happening in the latest. And there's a lot going on, especially as we talk about the science of reading and what's happening. So I'm going to talk with you today about, can a sound wall benefit my dyslexic students? And the answer is absolutely it can. So let's talk a little bit about, what does that mean? Well, you hear the term speech to print, and this is an opportunity to actually apply speech to print. So we are wired to process language unconsciously, and we we learn to speak without having to think about it. And kind of an interesting thing is that you learn words, and you even begin to learn to play with sounds at a very young age. You also learn about the syntax of the language at an oral level, so how words fit slots, how they go together. You learn that, and that develops in a over time, from 1 years old, when there might just be one word, to advancing to two or three words put together, to finally questions, putting the correct labels on things. All of those pieces have to do with that speech part of our brain and that phonological processor. But there's also the semantics, the meanings, and the syntax, and how all those words fit together. But we're focusing on the dyslexic child. So let's talk a little bit about what's that core deficit that we see with our dyslexic students. The core deficit in children who struggle to read, dyslexic or not, is the phonological processing part of the brain. So that ability to segment sounds, blend sounds, manipulate sounds, and especially that phonological working memory, being able to recall and putting those sounds in the correct order. So the retrieval process is part of what we're talking about when we are building sound walls. A little more about phonology and the importance of phonology, and understanding that phono has to do with sound, but it's speech sounds. I'm holding up my hand to my ear, like I'm speaking to someone on a phone, because it's speech sounds. It's different than an airplane flying over or the wind blowing through the trees. So if you don't understand the phonological structure of a word, you're going to have a hard time accessing that and finding it in your mental lexicon. And oftentimes in our spoken language, well, all of the time, our words are co-articulated. That means the sounds run together. So that makes it very difficult to pull sounds apart also. So we're going to really focus on the speech sound, the phonetics of our language when we talk about sound walls. How do you represent a phoneme if you don't have any awareness of it? And so we have these phonemes that exist in our language. We're going to create an awareness of those phonemes for our students, not just with the print, but we're going to go a little bit deeper. And I'm backing up without the print, and then we'll add the print also. But phonemes, they're mental parking spots, as it said, for a grapheme. So I have the sounds b, r, I, j. Now, my students can hear those sounds b, r, I, j, and they might write B-R-J, B-R-I-J. They might leave out the I, they might leave out the R, an initial spelling. That would be very common. But once I learn those sounds and I can track those sounds, and you begin to also teach me the print, what are my choices for spelling these sounds? Well, the J sound is especially variable. Is it going to be J, not at the end of a word? Is it going to be GE, or is it going to be DGE? Well, that's part of the instruction. I have that sound already, so we've created that phonological representation, and now I know I have some choices to spell that sound. but those choices for spelling will be introduced incrementally over time with lots of practice. That's what a well-designed curriculum does for us. So we say this is what the mental uh, Velcro to which we attach phonemes. And one of the points that I really want to make is that reading is not a visual process. Sure, you have to look at the print, but David Kilpatrick's really done some great work on this and telling us, teaching us, you all have probably seen this, but this is written in all different types of font. Studies up in uppercase and lowercase. Studies have convinced the researchers that readers do not match words to stored visual images. I can read that because I know how to read. I have mastered and become a proficient reader. We're not simply retrieving a visual image of every word we read. And we know this because reaction times to printed words are faster than reaction times to objects. So I can look at my computer and we know through lots of testing and time test that reading the word computer can happen more quickly than being able to recall that label. We also know that people with poor word recognition typically have average visual memories. So what are we talking about in visual memory? The idea that there's a weak correlation between word reading and visual memory is also something that we've learned about, but I'm talking about the idea that we have visual memory failures. For example, I might know the landmarks to get from one place to the next when I'm visiting Houston, Texas, big town, hard to get around if you don't know any of the landmarks. And if I was down there visiting, I would be able to find my way the first time if I had some good landmarks to follow. But might not be able to recall that the next time I'm there if I haven't retrieved that or followed that path frequently enough. But once we learn to read a word, we don't fail to remember new words or familiar words. So I think that that's a fascinating thing to think about, that I can remember all of the streets in my neighborhood when I was growing up. But then I go other places and I can't recall how I got from one place to the next because I don't know it well enough. But all the words on the screen right this minute, I can read them. I don't have a failure to read words. So there's something else in the brain that has wired that ability to do that. Okay, why am I making a big deal about the visual side of it? Well, oftentimes, people have thought of dyslexia as being a visual issue. We know that it's not. But here's another thing in classrooms that happens all the time. We've had word walls forever. So here's a typical word wall. And I want you to think about, we have 26 letters and I have a letter like S, and then look at that word underneath there, she. What's the first sound? It's the sh sound. So now, even though we know that phonology is an important part of beginning reading, we've completely disregarded that by putting a word like she under the letter S, as if kids should know that SH is the beginning sound of she. Or, oh wait, look to the right of that, to the T. We also have the, this, they. Those are all our voiced THs, the sound. Now, how confusing is that for kids when we say to them, well, she, it's under the S, or it's under the T. And you know they continue to read words like that and say to he because they're confused by that. So I'm going to suggest we're going to add sounds to the wall as opposed to just the 26 letters. There's 44 sounds. So we're going to focus on those phonemes and articulation, knowing that mouth positions, thinking about how we're producing the sounds, can be felt and viewed in a mirror and analyzed by learners. And David Kilpatrick would say, we want to get to that point of phonemic proficiency where I can quickly say a word like fry, change the to ul. What do I get? Fly. I should be able to do that in 1 second. We know that phonological working memory, that rapid automatic naming, that's often difficult for our dyslexic kids. So one of the things that we're doing is we're going to build those memory traces and build those retrieval paths so that they can do that more quickly and rapidly. I'm going to do that by focusing on phonemes and articulation, and I'm going to make that part of my daily practice. So this isn't just an intervention, but I'm thinking about, how do I help those kindergarten and first grade students that might not actually have to go for intensive intervention services if we have really good tier 1 instruction? So that's what I'm really focusing on here. These things can certainly be used in small groups and in intervention settings. But I'm really thinking about, how can we get things going for that initial instruction so we don't have to have as many interventions? That would be just the ultimate. So anchor the sound and then layer on the various graphemes used to represent the sound. Use mirrors. I had to put in a little plug. You can buy these little mirrors that you see here that are nice for the children's hands. The one with the picture with the little girl with the big bow in her hair, she doesn't have one of these mirrors. That's a larger one, but these are just right for to hold in their palm. So what's a sound wall? Let's get into this. We have a sound wall set up according to the articulation of speech sounds. So we're going to think about sounds that are made at the front of the mouth, and what are the sounds made at the very front? For example, the sound, it's made at the very front with my lips together, moving more to the middle of your mouth. So if I said the sh sound, my tongue is pulled back. For some people, the middle of the tongue touches the top of the mouth. For others, it's really more the sides of the tongue that are touching as you say that sh sound. And then you have a sound like the k, k, as in cat, that's in the back of the throat. So we're going to talk about like the arrangement, the organization of speech sounds that we put on a sound wall, which is different from A to Z. And I'll talk about that a little bit too. So why? Because kids come at this from sound. They say, where do I find she? And they're looking for sh, sh, sh. And you say it's under the S. And they're thinking, S is the sh sound. No, that's not what we want them to think. We want them to know that sh sound is spelled SH. Yes, there are many other patterns for spelling the sh sound, but I'm talking kindergarten and first grade. So we're going to stick with those for right now. Okay, I want to anchor an anchor to teach the letter sound knowledge using these articulatory gestures. And I'm going to attach phonemes to the orthographic patterns, because even though I call this a sound wall and organizing this in a different way rather than A through Z, it has everything to do with print. So that's what I want you to keep in mind here. I know one of the big questions that comes up is, where do I learn all this information? Because I can't teach you everything in a 1 hour video, but I have to, as I said at the beginning, give a big shout out for LETRS. And again, my colleagues, Louisa and Carol, but Dr. Louisa Moats, the author of LETRS, and Carol, the co-author. And LETRS stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. So language, phonology is part of our language, orthography is part of our language, semantics, syntax, discourse, pragmatics, those are all layers of our language. And we need to keep that in mind as we're teaching our students. It's not just about the print. There are things that the phonology is what's anchoring that print. So we'll talk more about that. I want to tell you, do a little more of a plug for LETRS here and talk about, what is it? What is Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling? Well, we have a 3rd edition online course, face-to-face training. It's true professional development. LETRS is not a program that you go back and teach, but it's like getting a master's. For those of you who have been through that, you know that. But we have, Louisa and Carol have beautifully put together the scientifically based practices for instructional routines, activities, and approaches. What are validated by that research? We talk about those relationships among language, reading, and spelling. What's a comprehensive integrated program, depending upon, and what grade and age am I working with? What assessments can I use? And then what are the theoretical models? Like, what are we what are we basing all this information on? Everybody knows, I think, the simple view of reading, one of our theoretical models, the four-part processor, uh, the reading rope, and Aries phases. Those are the models that we use throughout letters to help us organize our thinking around our instruction and our assessment. So I'm just going to encourage you all, if you have not attended any letters training, to look into that, because that's where you're going to gain the depth of knowledge that you need in order to really understand and appreciate a sound wall. So this is an example. This is right out of letters, and some of you all may have taken the second edition. So I said this is used with permission from letters module 2, and but these same charts are going to show up in third edition, of course. And you'll notice on the chart here, we have across the top how the consonants are organized. These are it's just the consonants here. I'll show you the vowels in a few minutes, but where and how we use our mouths. So with your lips together, your teeth on your lips, your tongue between your teeth, the tongue pulled back on the ridge behind your teeth, the tongue pulled back on the roof of the mouth. We produce sounds by lifting our tongue or airflow through the back of our throat, and then we have one sound that comes all the way down from our glottal area. We also have what we do with our breath and our vocal cords along the side there: stops, nasals, fricatives, affricates, glides, and liquids. I told you guys this was a lot of information all at once, but I'm going to show you. So these are the consonant sounds, and I'm going to show you something that I've created that's a little, trying to make it user-friendly for kids to create that awareness of sounds. So here you see what I call kid lips, and my colleague Antonio Fierro and I have created these based on our charts from letters. But again, what's the classroom application? So we've taken pictures of children's mouths, and you'll see we worked to get diverse images and to represent each of these sounds. So we have a variety of children that we worked with to do this. And here you see the consonant chart, the sounds arranged. And I'm just going to back up. So there's the sound chart, and here are the sounds with what does my mouth look like when I'm making that sound. And then you'll notice right below each of the sounds, there are keywords. So underneath those keywords, there are graphemes, or spellings that represent those. Those are covered up right now because this is what my sound wall might look like in kindergarten. But as I begin to teach the graphemes, I'm going to uncover those. I'm still going to teach all those phonemes. I was on a phone call several times this week with Susan Brady, and one of her comments was, well, you might not teach the zh sound. Not a lot of words that kids encounter with zh in kindergarten and first grade, but the word treasure, I can be aware of that zh sound. I'm not going to spell with it, and the patterns for spelling with that sound are very unreliable. But I can create an awareness. So that's what I want you all thinking about as we're doing this. I'm going to be working with sounds with my students, and regardless of whether they can read or spell those sounds, I just need to create that awareness of sound. So I'm using these articulatory gestures to get my students to think about that, because we hear the sounds in the ear. The articulatory gestures and the mouth movements help process, and that they ease that process of creating those sounds. Our sounds, one of the reasons we use the pictures is because our sounds are ephemeral and they disappear as soon as they're heard. So sounds are fleeting. You hear it and it's over with, is what we mean here. So Al Lieberman, Isabel Lieberman, they're the ones, Don Schenkweiler, they're the ones who really brought phonological awareness to our attention in the 70s. And so I have a quote from Lieberman who says that articulatory gestures rather than acoustic features represent phonemes in the brain. The idea that I've got something more tangible, because once I say let's see, I'm going to go with the zzz sound. I'm thinking I've got to use a voiced sound so you can hear me. The zzz sound. I say it zzz and it's over. Zip. The zzz sound is gone once I say it. But if I can get my students to start thinking about zzz, my tongue's behind my teeth. And actually I can feel that airflow that's continuous. Zzz, and it tickles a little bit. And I can feel it in my throat. Zzz, or if that doesn't work, I can put my hands over my ears and say zzz. And so I'm creating this Velcro for my students as I'm thinking of, as I'm describing that sound, and I'm getting them to think about those sounds. Now, I know that might be something that's a new idea for you, unless you're a speech pathologist. Maybe you've had some Linda Bell training. Maybe you've been trained in Take Flight. But for general classroom teachers, we don't usually have this information at our disposal. So I'm trying to elevate that, like I said, back into a regular classroom. What if we just taught all of our kids about the sounds, and then we begin doing exercises so that we can think about the sounds and we can manipulate those sounds. All right, I'm going to show you another picture of the consonant chart, and I want to talk to you just for a minute about EL students, just things that I wanted to highlight, not too much detail, but as I said, my colleague, Antonio Fierro, helped create this slide by drawing our attention to these sounds. So I'm going to say, if you look at the top row, we have stop, the unvoiced sound and the voiced sound. But look at this. You see my yellow line here, that diagonal line. We have the t and the d sound. Well, in Spanish, there's not a clear d sound. It's much softer and gentler, as Antonio says. And it's more like a the sound, dos, not a hard d sound. All of these stop sounds exist in Spanish, but they never come at the ends of words either. So what does that mean? If you're working with Spanish speakers, I might be aware of that sound, but I'm not used to hearing it at the end of a word, so I might drop it off. It might feel funny to say it there. You'll notice the black dots around the sound. That's our nasal sound. It's in the back of our throat. As in ring. And when I say that sound exists in Spanish. It doesn't come at the ends of words. And you have a word like banco. And so that sounds exist, but it's not quite the same match. Here's another insight. So you see the f and v sound. That v sound doesn't exist in Spanish. I just said a few minutes ago about this sound, the v sound. So dos, there's not a clear unvoiced th, but more of the voiced th often, and it's with the letter D, dos. Also, the z sound. We know that the letter z exists in Spanish, but there's no z sound. And the z is pronounced with the s sound, as in zapatos, or you'll also hear our Spanish-speaking children will say something like cheese as instead of cheese, because the z sound is not something that exists in the Spanish language. So that has to be taught, directly taught. And I have to be aware of that so that I can help my students develop that sound and that ability to match the speech to the print. These two sounds, the j, the sh, and the j sound don't exist at all in Spanish. And the j sound doesn't exist. We have the ch sound, but not the j sound. And then you have, and I'm going to say in American English, so we have the and the sound, and the sound is a sound that we've really dropped out of our language, but it doesn't exist in Spanish at all. And then there's that liquid, the r sound. And there's that sound exists in I'm sorry. That sound, it kind of transfers in Spanish, but it's more of a trilled, that rolling R instead of just the r sound that we have in American English. So a little bit of insight, realizing if I understand more about the speech sounds that my students are coming in with, and what do I need to directly teach in order to help them develop that awareness, studying noticing what's my mouth doing, what's my tongue doing, is there a vibration when I make that sound, practicing with words that have that sound at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, getting them to notice those things. So, okay, why use a sound wall? Because we need an accurate depiction of speech to print. I started off with that, so now we're going to dig more deeply into that. Each element, it can be learned like multiplication tables or chemistry charts. It's an organizational system. And I will tell you that I've had a number of dyslexic students, older and adults, say to me, man, when you put that sound chart up and you begin to explain, these are the sounds in our language. Yeah, we have lots of different spellings for the sounds, but these are the sounds. It was like the missing piece for me. And I think that that is absolutely fascinating, especially when I have older children or adults that can tell me that, and oftentimes our younger children cannot articulate that, but it just makes sense, like the logic to our language. How do we make sense of it? We learn about the sounds, how they're put an organization to them. That's what we've done here using Luisa's sound charts. And now we're making it more student friendly. So our language is more understandable if it's organized by sound. And we're establishing a template for learning about the language by anchoring to these articulatory gestures. So here's some of the keys that I really wanted to talk about. One, this is nothing new, especially for this crowd, but explicit instruction. Teach and analyze the articulatory gestures, as I just described when going through those sounds and thinking about the Spanish phonemes. Analyze and discuss a few phonemes at a time using labels. So don't be afraid to use the terms stops, nasals, fricatus, affricates, etc. that I used. It's just like putting the label on a letter name, putting the label on that's a dog, and then I'm going to get more specific. That dog is a golden retriever. That dog is a poodle. I'm putting a label on a category. These might be terms that you're not used to. Believe me, the kids pick them up easily. And I'm going to show you a little video in a minute of a teacher working with kids. Over 10 to 12 weeks, introduce all 44 sounds. Yep, that's what I mean. All 44, not spellings, but the sounds. And so that's why I said, do not confuse speech and print. I can learn to manipulate, play with, adjust those sounds. So I can say the word lake, ache, change the A to I don't have to be able to read lake or look in order to do that. But if I know the A sound and I know the sound, it's going to make it that much easier for me to assign spellings to those sounds if I already have that sound in my phonological lexicon. Okay, provide exercises to get children to attend to the phonemes. I'm going to give you some ideas, and on your handout, you have a couple of things to get you started on that. Teach letter recognition. So I'm teaching sounds and I'm thinking kindergarten. I'm teaching sounds and I'm teaching letter names. Those things are both happening at the same time. I'm going to start mapping that speech to the print as soon as possible. So as I begin teaching some very common sounds, I call them the Wheel of Fortune letters, but maybe the letter S makes this sound. I'm going to have a short vowel and then maybe the letter the T, so I can read the word it and blend that together, and or maybe even just starting with it. And so attaching that speech to the print, our goal is to get them reading, but helping them doing it in a slow, way so that I'm layering on and I'm practicing over and over again. So English doesn't make sense if you teach the phoneme grapheme. Does I say doesn't? English does make sense if you teach the phoneme grapheme relationships while building that knowledge. So again, that's why I don't teach all the spellings at once. As I begin to teach the spellings, then I uncover those on the cards that are posted underneath the sounds. All right, I haven't talked about vowels yet, and I need to get us there because we're halfway through our time, and I do have 2 videos I want to share with you. So how do we produce vowel phonemes? The vowels, we have what we do with our tongue as we open and or round our lips. So really vowel sounds has to do more with the opening of the mouth and a little bit of where in the mouth is the sound being produced. Is the tongue high, low, or pulled back? So we kind of have that front, that tight smile, E. I have more of an open sound like ah, and then a back rounded sound like and I'm going to show you, okay, might be a shocker. There's 18 vowel sounds in the English language. And so here you see the vowel valley that we use in letters. Again, you need several days and many practices to get comfortable with this. But I'm also going to say, as teachers, you can learn this with your students. And I'm always fascinated by how kids glom onto this. And I'm talking kindergarten and first grade kids, that they really begin to make sense of these things because they are thinking. We have studies, and Rebecca Treeman did lots of studies with pre-K children to help us figure out that kids are feeling what their mouths are doing and trying to represent those sounds. All right, here's another a little more student-friendly picture of the vowel chart. And I just want to show you, I don't think we see this in the videos that I put in today, but thinking about these vowel sounds, and you can see, I know it's not the clearest image, but you can see the mouth opening as it drops down. So as I say these sounds, I'm going to put my hand underneath my jaw, and I do this with children so that they can begin to notice what's happening with my mouth. And I do start with teaching them the vowel sounds, and I'm not worried about them thinking about the spellings. I just want to create that awareness of sounds. Okay, so here we go. E, I, A, I, ah. I hope you noticed how my mouth dropped down. E, I, A, I, ah. O, oo. Did you see my lips round? Oo and U. On the bottom left, you see diphthongs. Diphthongs are really a speech term that have to do with 2 movements of the mouth, oi and ow. Yep, you see 2 pictures there. You see some other cards that have 2 pictures too. But these are the 2 sounds that we really identify as diphthongs when we're teaching letters. Vowel R, or. And then we have the schwa sound. I don't have a picture of a schwa sound, but it's an or an I sound. I need to draw some arrows to the I and the when I teach that to my students. But I'm going to show you a sound wall discussion in first grade. And this teacher is talking about it. The video starts out talking about the w sound with kids. And it's so interesting, just you have to listen closely. But one of the students says, well, I thought you were talking about the Y. And that makes sense because in first grade, kindergarten and first grade, the w, you're not going to come up with the letter W. Y makes a lot of sense to kids. It makes perfect sense once you start to analyze letter names and sounds. And why kids have confusions. They're trying to learn all of those pieces in beginning reading. I have to learn the letter names, I have to pay attention to the sound, and then I have to figure out what letters match up to those sounds, what graphemes. So here's a beautiful little discussion with this first grade classroom. And this was February of 2020, right before everything shut down. But this, you can see how comfortable the kids are talking about these speech sounds.
All right. Now we talked about that. All right, now, okay. Now let's talk about the difference between those because I see you're confused. All right, the Y. Where's your tongue? Come here. Look. Look at mine. Look in your mirror. Check mine. Check yours. Remember I told you not many glasses for vowel sound? Yes. I did, because what's the next sound after yes and yes? Yes. What's the next sound? And that's a what? That's a vowel sound. All right, so let's talk about our vowel sounds. All right, our vowel what? Our vowel valley. All right, so we know this one's missing. It fell on the bottom of the gutter. All right, it's double E. Make that mouth movement. Wait, how does your mouth feel? Tight. Remember, we put our hands under our chin. We did that yesterday. That's kind of new for us. All right, give me the sound. Are you ready? Here we go. E, talking about these two sounds. All right, oh, you give me that sound. Ow. Look in your mirror. What's your mouth doing? Ow. Ow. Ow.
Okay, so here we are in first grade, and this school was using the CKLA curriculum, and they've already introduced the ow in first grade. Again, it's February first grade, but this children were not having a problem with that at all. And I have to tell you, so these were schools in Alabama, in Crenshaw County, Alabama. I always have to give my friends there a big shout out for recording and inviting me to work with them. But these children, the teachers were skeptical. They had never used sound walls, and we began to implement them there. And by Christmas time, they for sure were picking out children who they thought would be identified for possibly tier 2 or even tier 3 instruction. When I was there in February, they said using their sound walls, really mapping the speech to the print, and not just during this time, the morning warm up before they're going to go into their reading, but the teachers are constantly referring back to the sound walls when kids are having confusions or problems, so that children are making those connections. They had moved, they said that they have all their kids reading close to or on level, and they were not going to have to identify any tier 2 or tier 3 kids at that point. I found that incredibly astonishing and encouraging. I'm so sorry that we had to close everything down. And this year, of course, it's making it difficult for all of us with not being face-to-face. The importance, I think, of teachers having pictures to show gestures and getting kids to examine what's happening. Not even just pictures, but getting close to the camera and having children pay attention to what's happening. So here, I'm going to use another example of a word wall. So look at all the letters under the word, look at all the words under the letter A. All right. How many different sounds are there that are represented by that letter A? Now you see the schwa sound in about, and you're going to see that down on the word around also. You see the AR as in R, and then you see AL as in all. You have a little bit different sound, and you have and am. So that's technically a short vowel, but even the A is, one of the teachers in the videos will say the the nasals, the and the it makes the vowels cry and they go eh. So even that sounds not exactly clear, but I could put that under a short A. So I ask you all to think about, if you had all the vowel sounds posted, would it make more sense to kids than seeing this whole list of words posted under the letter A when I don't have any way to attach, like what sound would that be? So that's just, again, getting you to push you to think about this. So I think in your handouts that you have as a download, I'm going to make sure that those are in our files, how to implement a sound wall. And I will say that I worked with Dawn Durham in Pennsylvania. She's the patent offices. And if you look for sound wall talks on if you Google sound wall talks, you'll see some of Dawn's talks that are amazing. And one of the things that she said as a classroom teacher was, I really wish someone would have assisted me in thinking through what needs to happen in order for me to build a sound wall, to put that up. So these are some of her questions that she came up with. Where are you going to put it? Is it a location that you can access and your students can access? If it's too high, they can't actually see what's happening. They can't compare things and look at their mouths. And we even encourage you to possibly place a mirror on the wall next to your sound wall so kids can look at their mouths. Is location readily available when you're teaching in a place that you can turn and point? Do I have a large enough space for both a consonant and a vowel wall in your class? What materials could I use to incorporate a smaller wall in my classroom if I needed to? And that's why, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, we have some posters that we created to help minimize space for teachers. When you have to rearrange materials that are already on the wall to accommodate this space. Teachers ask me all the time, should I take down my word wall and put up a sound wall? Yes, you don't need both. Please move to a sound wall, especially in kindergarten, first and second grade. It just makes more sense for kids. Also, what materials do you need? Do you have cards with keywords? How are you going to lay out your sound wall? So I have clusters or horizontal line. You'll see a picture here on the left-hand side, and that picture was actually taken in a classroom at William Carey University where a college professor was teaching sound walls. But I've been in lots of classrooms that have it posted that way, just like our charts, or in a horizontal line. If I don't have enough room, I can still group my phonemes by the stop sounds. And then she has the fricative sounds, and then probably the nasal sounds. So maybe I do have to put them in a straight line, but in a horizontal line, but I'm going to explain to my students why they're arranged that way to help them, again, notice what's happening in their mouths. Do you have labels? So again, on the big chart, you can see the cute signs that she's used for stop and nasal and fricatives. And she's put across the top of the chart, what are you doing with your tongue, your teeth, and your lips? And how am I going to build in articulation supports? Do you have mirrors? Do you have pictures? What else can you do to support that? And so there's a bigger picture, just to give you a moment to look at that just a little bit larger on the screen. And so the one on the left, you can see the consonant chart. And then if you kind of look to the right side of that wall, you can see where she's started to build the vowel valley also. So those are things to think about. Plan for teaching new sounds. Will you place all the cards on the wall prior to teaching the sounds? Will you turn over cards? So maybe you have the sounds posted, but you don't flip them over until you've actually introduced them. What are some instructional routines that I need to have? How do you introduce new sounds? Again, I recommend you start with the stops. Stop sound, start with stops, then add the nasals, the fricatives. Kids pick these things up relatively easily, I think more easily than we do as adults. Can I build in time during my daily routine for sound wall instruction use or review? And will students place the sound cards on the wall or why? Just little things to think about. Have I established a plan for reviewing sounds on the sound wall? Sporadically throughout the day, during the ELA block, the morning routine, just getting us to think about, like, what am I going to do as I'm using this? Because we don't want it to just become wallpaper. We want this to be an interactive tool. So once we get the sound wall posted, what am I supposed to do? Well, we put in a couple of daily practice ideas, and I'm going to show you another video of a teacher who's doing some of these types of things. But after you have it posted, point to the sounds, review the sounds, talk about where in the mouth you're producing those sounds, remind the kids that they're arranged from the front of the mouth to the back of the mouth. And I didn't put the slide in here today, but I also have a slide that says, do not take down your alphabet, A through Z. Most of us have an alphabet posted above our whiteboards or somewhere in our classroom. We're still teaching A through Z. And so please don't be confused about that. But you also are bringing in this new layer of phonology by teaching the articulatory gestures and the phonemes of our language. Very explicitly teaching that before starting to do exercises manipulating those sounds. If I actually know what they are, they're going to be easier for me to manipulate and work with, blend and segment. So once you have the sound wall up, ask a couple of questions about the sound. You don't have to spend lots of time every day. So what are 3 sounds that are made by the air flowing through my nose? Point to those sounds, the the and the Hold your nose while you're saying those sounds. So if I start saying the and then I hold my nose, I can't say it. Kids love that kind of thing. So you're going to see a little bit of that in this next video. Again, another Alabama teacher.
Very good. Right here. Everybody make that sound. Is your voice on or off when you make that sound? Ah, very good. What about this one? Y'all make that sound? Is your voice on or off? What do and Z have in common?
They're the same.
What do you mean they're both the same?
We do the same thing.
Your lips and your mouth are doing the same thing. Very good.
But
All
not
right.
the same.
These are your favorite. Who can give me an example of a nasal sound? Julie, you got one? Very good. What happens if we plug our nose
It's
on?
wrong.
You can't do it, can you? You want to try it? Do it. Let's do it. Grab your nose. Can you do it?
No.
No, it helps where you can't do it. So who remembers what it does to our vowels if we have a nasal sound? It makes them do what? Cry. Someone says, all right, good. What is another nasal sound? She said, what's another one? Amar. Very good. Very good. All right, who remembers our liquids right here? Wait, Julie keeps raising her hand. I think somebody else to talk. Amy, you got one? What's your tongue do when you say, let me see.
It touches the back of your teeth.
It does touch the back of your teeth. Very good. All right, y'all are so smart. All right, we're going to move on from that.
Okay, so you got to see that teacher do a couple of just some review things. They've already learned about the sounds, so now daily practice. We might ask, what 2 sounds are made when I put my top teeth on my bottom lip and blow? Well, that's the f and the v sound. So if I've taught the spelling patterns, I might ask, how do I spell v at the end of the word? Well, hopefully my students know I have that weird word have, and I know have ends with the v sound, but I always have to have VE at the end of a word. I don't have words that just end in B. So I'm going to reinforce that once I've taught that sound and that spelling. So which sound is voice, this or the Z sound? You saw her ask a question like this, so paying attention to that. What sound do you hear at the end of each of these words? Has, was, is. Oh yeah, that's the Z sound. Let's look at our Z card. We have the zebra card here, and it has a Z and it has an S on it. And you know what? I hear a Z sound the letter S represents the Z sound. So if I write down the word is, I notice that that S says the Z sound. And those are the kinds of things I'm trying to make connections for my students over and over again. My young ones, especially because we oftentimes teach has, was, and is as if they need to be learned as whole words, but they don't. I can analyze them and I can get my students to start to notice and to anchor these sounds. And that with my short words, and when S comes after a vowel, it's going to represent that Z sound. So I might as well go ahead and tell my students that that S can say this or the Z sound in this case, starting off. I could do the same thing with what's the difference between the T and the D sound. We intentionally chose a picture of a little girl who was missing her two front teeth so that one, you could see where the tongue was going and up on the ridge behind your teeth, that alveolar ridge. But also because so many of our first graders look like this and they could identify with this picture. So we could talk about the difference between the T and the D sound, the voiced and the unvoiced T and the voiced D sound. And in first grade, I'm teaching ED, and boy, that's confusing. ED sometimes says the T sound and ED sometimes says the D sound. But if I know that ED says the T sound, as in jump, it's because the P sound, the ending sound in the word jump, is unvoiced, just like the T sound. So my voice stays off. Or if I have a word that ends with a voiced sound, so I'm going to say a word like sail, and we're going to sail on the boat, and we sailed around the lake, sailed. My sail, is a voice sound, and so my voice stays on, and the ed says the D sound. You'll have to stay tuned to figure out why does it say ed if you don't have a program that's taught you that. That'll have to be a follow-up. All right, what else? Other daily reviews. Point to all the sounds on the vowel chart as you say them, asking your students to repeat them. Point to the give the keyword apple, make a gestures if they're holding an apple. Point to the I, and make the gesture I. Did you know in Spanish the I sound doesn't exist? So, and the letter I in Spanish says the E sound. Think about yes, see, right? So the letter I represents the E sound, and I don't even have an I sound in Spanish. Oh my gosh, why is it so hard for my kids to read these closed syllable words? Because the I sound is not a sound that's part of my language. I have to learn that sound. So again, keeping that awareness of what's happening with the phonology, the English language, and how do you bridge the gaps for other students that are coming into your classrooms. Okay, another little practice here. Focus on specific spelling patterns. So I brought that up with the V and the VE spelling, but use the sound to determine spelling choices that have been introduced. For example, with the K, when do I use K? When do I use C? When do I use CK? What are my choices for spelling the sound? My teeth on my top lips, but my voice is turned off for the my top teeth on the bottom lips, sorry. How do I spell the word cuff, right? That f is in final position. So I would want them to know about the floss rule. When I have words that have a short vowel, it will be spelled FF. And if I've taught that spelling pattern, but I want my students to be aware of that sound at the ends of words. A couple of other activities, describe it. Say a consonant or a vowel sound, have them repeat the sound, have them describe how the sound is made. What are they doing? And you notice the teacher said, is your mouth tight? When you say that E sound, and the kids were able to say, yes, that is tight. For the ah sound, they might say that's the doctor sound. They open their mouth really wide. For the sound, they might say something like, my lips are together, and they kind of tickle when I say that sound. That's what you want the kids to notice and to pay attention to when you're teaching these sounds. All right, check it out. Have students work with a partner and face each other, say either a consonant or vowel sound, and have them repeat and watch their friends. Of course, this is hard when you're 6 feet away from each other or you have on a mask. Student B describes to student A how you said the sound, and then student B finishes describing the sound. Both students say the sound a final time. So again, just that opportunity to practice and say sounds multiple times. Quick, easy, direct activities, a quick review every day, 5 to 7 minutes of this phonemic and phonetic awareness, how the sounds are produced, which is going to make those activities when I'm blending, segmenting, doing a number of different tasks. Now I'm ready to do those exercises because I can identify those phonemes. All right. So a closing thought here that, again, I have to reference David Kilpatrick. He's just such a scholar and always wonderful to listen to. Has so much valuable information, has translated it into practice for us. I just really appreciate his work. So as he says, we can prevent most reading difficulties. We must train students in letter sound skills and phonological awareness in kindergarten to be sure they have the skills needed to start the mapping process to when they are expected to learn to read. So building those foundational skills, those underpinnings for our students as we're thinking about how to develop the layers of language for successful reading. So again, I'm Mary Dahlgren. You can find some of the things that I talked about at Tools for Reading, the number 4, toolsforreading.com. We have the Kid Lips pictures. We have a manual that explains all of the sounds and little mirrors. I have the phoneme grapheme cards. You can see there a picture of those. And on the back, I have all the explanations for how do you use this pattern and when. And then we have consonant charts and folders. And the charts, consonant and vowel charts. And I've even created a folder so each student can have their own folder so we don't have to touch anything. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you have a great conference. Thanks so much.